So I started out writing for the stage, and I started writing plays when I was about 17, when I was still at what was sixth form in those days, and I started writing sort of comedy plays, sort of farces and that sort of thing. And sort of a big influence on my early work was Joe Orton. I really admired Joe Orton. I'd been in one of his plays at school. I'd read his biography by John Lear. I thought he was a really cool person, really. And so I began writing these sort of Orton-esque farces and wrote like that for a few years. And started putting my plays on, I suppose, when I was about 19, I think, in sort of rooms above pubs and that sort of thing, with some friends. We sort of got together, formed a theatre company, put on the plays above pubs, and sort of taught myself to write for the stage that way, and sort of wrote a few farces, and then decided I wanted to get a bit more serious with my writing. And I wrote a play called The World and His Wife, which for me was a sort of personal breakthrough, because I really felt I found my voice with that play. It still had sort of influences from other writers. It was still a bit Orton-esque, and I was quite into Stephen Berkoff at the time, so it was quite sort of big in its language and that sort of thing. But that particular play, I think that's the first time I really thought, well, this is the way I write for the stage. And since then I've written a number of plays. I've written about 12 or 15 plays if you include short ones, about 10 of which have been performed. So for a long time I was just writing for the stage and had no real interest in writing for anything else. And a play of mine won a competition, a playwriting competition in 1992 at Croydon, the Warehouse Theatre in Croydon. They produced it there. That did very well. It was really well received. I got an agent after that, and have continued to write plays since then. But really, I did talk a little bit about developing some film stuff or TV stuff. I wrote for TV for a short while. I wrote for a soap opera, which is best left unmentioned, the name of it. Not one that's still going, nor should be going. And then I was asked to teach a script writing class, in fact at the uni where I now teach, but this was as a visiting lecturer. And the emphasis in that class was on radio script writing and film script writing, which I hadn't really done. So I had to teach myself how to do it in order to teach the students how to do it, and then I gained a real interest. Now I think the real difference between the two, I think they are quite distinct mediums, although a lot of the stuff carries over. So character carries over, character development, plot development, all that sort of thing, narrative, that all carries over. But theatre is much more, I think, about the words people are saying and the spatial relationships between them. A big influence on my writing once I formally studied it at university, which I did about 7 or 8 years into my writing career, was Jean Genet, the French writer Jean Genet. And studying his plays taught me a lot about the 3 dimensions of the acting space. And so very much when I write for the stage, I think about 3 dimensions, I think about above and below, that whole sort of medieval, really, we're going back to the Greeks, idea of there being a sort of a hierarchy of space in a way. And I think in terms of exits and entrances, so people coming on, going off and that sort of thing, and the impact those exits and entrances make are very much what theatre writing is about for me. As well as the language. I think that in theatre you don't have any real duty to be realistic in any way. So I prefer plays that have some sort of style to them, that have a formality about them. There's an interest in form in them, and that's one of the pleasures that you get from watching them. So it's not really of interest to me when I'm writing for the stage to become faithful to the world outside the theatre space. I'm creating something within that theatre space which has its own laws, which has its own ways of being. Whereas film, I think, is slightly different for two ways. One, you're primarily telling the story, which is much more sort of narrative based in the way a novel is than stage. Drama, and stage is mostly about drama, so it's about the interactions between figures. Whereas I think film script is a bit more about story, a bit more about narrative, and so has a much more narrated element, and the camera is the thing that does the narrating in that. And so you have to think in terms of visual storytelling. How am I going to tell this story through what the camera sees? So I'm putting on page what the camera is going to see, whereas a film script is a sort of set of instructions for the director and cameraman, or sort of suggestions, this is what you're going to put in front of the camera. On stage, it's really a set of instructions for the director and the actors. But yeah, the main thing is that theatre is about voice and about space, and film is about visual storytelling. So it's quite a different head, even though, of course, a lot of the things that you're doing are going to be transferable skills between one and the other.
Buckets of rain, buckets of tears, got all them buckets coming out of my ears, buckets of moonbeams in my hand.
I've been influenced by other playwrights. I think that, as I said, Joe Orton was really important at one stage. I was going to see quite a lot of Stephen Burkoff stuff at one stage, and the way his plays really freed up both the body and the language of that the actors were using was really important. Howard Barker was hugely important at one point, and so was Edward Bond. For various reasons, and John Genet for the reasons I've spoken about. But I think also I'm a big opera goer. I've sort of got into opera more and more as the years have gone on, and I certainly sit down and compose a play. So there's a sort of a movement of music to the play, which is very important. So I learned that from opera, and also, I'm a huge admirer of Bob Dylan, both as a writer, as a songwriter, but also as an artist. And I think really, ultimately, he taught me what it is to be an artist, in that you basically have to follow what your own vision of doing things is. And he sort of prompted me, sort of listening very carefully to what he was doing, prompted me to this whole idea that the writer has no answers, really, and not even ask questions. It's really about casting some sort of spell and arranging a tapestry of images which people can then get fascinated by, in whatever way they choose to. So it's really been following, I mean, he does that, Genet does that, Barker very much can teach you about that. It's really about divesting yourself of the urge to teach the audience anything. And if you can do that, then I think you really break through and get free of the ideologies that keep people in their place all the time, one way or the other, be they right wing or left wing or centrist, all that rubbish.